Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Martin and Wendy Williams. We're at the Jungle Hospital in rural Honduras, and I'm excited to be able to chat with them and have a conversation about medical missions here in this area. And why don't you guys start by maybe telling us a little bit about, you raised a family here, so a little bit about you guys and your kids maybe, and your experience here as raising a family in Honduras.
Okay, well, the story starts in 1994 when we first came to Honduras. Under our mentors were Jack and Shirley Dyer. And back then it was just Wendy, myself, and our two-year-old
Samuel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that we're starting on our 25th year. So we came with a 2-year-old, and 2 years later we had our daughter Rachel. Mm-hmm. And so she was born here in Honduras. And we raised them here, homeschooling. I worked at various schools as their teacher and worked as a teacher while Martin went to medical school here. So we actually were here for 5 years when God spoke and said, medical school. Wow. To be a doctor, but not go back to the States and become a doctor, but here in country.
That's kind of powerful. Tell us a little bit about that story. That's cool. I've heard it before, but I'd love you to share it.
Well, I had always had the inclination, and if you went back to my childhood, I really felt like even in my Catholic faith that I was brought up in, that God spoke to me, medical missions. And that's a long story right there. And so as an adult, that always was something in our heart, in our relationship from the beginning, but in my heart personally. So I was always looking to see how God was going to do that. When we came here, we were working under Jack and Shirley Dyer, and we were part of a dairy farm operation. And during that time, 2 individuals at different times, different people, spoken to my life personally and would just out of the woodwork come and say, you need to go to medical school. One guy, and then something happened similar, and the next guy would share the same kind of words from God to me. And it was not an easy thing. At first I just thought, what a comical...
Well, at first he said, no way. No way. I'm so happy with what I'm doing. I'm finally out of school, a grown up, loving my job. I don't want to go back to school, and I don't even know if I can go to school in Honduras, and I don't want to leave. I know that. So I think it took God sending the second person to direct and say, go to school here. Like, go back to medical school. You don't have to leave the country. So we actually drove the 8 hours, went to the capital city, trying to find out if it was even possible, and found out that it was. So we actually moved the whole family after 5 years here, and loving what we did with the Dyers, who kind of trained us in not just the language, but the culture and how to live here and how to do ministry here. And so I think that foundation was so important for us, those first 5 years with them and working under them, and went to the capital city still as missionaries, but went to medical school. And fortunately, our supporters said, we're going to consider you still a missionary. We felt like we still were, right? Mm-hmm. So I began working as a teacher just to pay the rent, and Martin started full-time school, so we were there 5 years in Tegucigalpa, and came back to the side of the country to finish off medical school, trying to get back to help finish this building.
That's tremendous. Now, Martin, your background is a little different. You were born in South America, were you not?
Right. I was born in Ecuador, and so late 60s, my mother migrated to Canada, looking to get into New York City, but that didn't work out, so Toronto was second choice, and that's where I grew up. That's my background. We met in Lee University. Back then it was Lee College in Cleveland, Tennessee.
Okay.
So our story began a little bit in the
80s.
The 80s, yeah. 82, 83.
Yeah, I'm from Alabama. So.
All right.
So he says there's no one more American than he is, because he was born in South America, raised in North America, and lives in Central America. He says, I am American.
You're Pan-African or Pan-American. Yes,
that's right.
That's awesome.
That's true. I'm just from Alabama, so I don't have that cool story.
So you spent some time in Florida, right, as well, doing education?
Right. So when we got married, and I went back and finished my undergrad, and then I felt like God directed me to Central Florida, and my parents were living there at the time. so I worked as a lab tech at first, and then I was stipend to the PhD program in biochemistry and molecular biology. And I did a lot of research in insulin, I guess the T1, the transporter 1 and 4. So there's a lot of research and a couple of papers that came of that. It was it was a lot of fun, very satisfying, and I could see myself doing that for the rest of my life. If I didn't have God's calling to medical missions, I think that would have been a default there.
Kind of doing that and asking God, how do you become a missionary? What do you do? We had no idea. We knew one missionary, and we just knew him because we knew his son. And Martin had met him for 5 minutes at his son's graduation, and he was the only missionary we knew. So we really were just praying, God, what do we do to prepare? Not knowing that we were preparing the whole time. You know, that I had studied accounting, that he was a mechanic on the side, that every house we lived in we had to fix up, and we never lived in a new place. So when we came on the mission field finally, we realized that all of those skills were immediately put to use, and that was our preparation. But that was how we got to Honduras, was that one missionary we knew, that a friend called and said, Jack Dyer's in the country, you should call him. I was like, we don't know him, but he's the only one we know of. And after him calling me 3 times saying, you really need to call him, we made that awkward phone call, or I made him make it and say, we really want to do missions, but we don't even know how to get started. And he said, I'm coming to Florida next week to see a friend. What if I stop by and talk to you, my wife and I? And that's how we got the invitation to come.
That was May of '94, and it was about the time that I was finishing in the program of biochemistry and molecular biology. And we were here in June of '94.
Yes.
So that was our first trip into this country, and we came back with all guns loaded in October of that same year.
So he invited us for a 1-year internship. So we actually came and worked under them in an internship role first, and then they invited us to stay on. That's how we made it. That's how we got to Honduras. That's how we came down here.
So now you turned a dairy farm into a hospital. Tell us how that happened. That's kind of crazy.
Well, the farm belonged to the Dyers, and
right.
He was an engineer back in Louisiana, and she was I think the engine and power behind him and her. Great lady. He was a great motivator, speaker, and a lot of ideas from him. And I think, back in Louisiana, there was a time after that when they did their missions work here in Honduras, starting, I think, from the early 70s. So when we came, it was 20 years later, 20 some odd years later. And what they had done, they had gone through the whole mess between Honduras and Nicaragua in the 70s, and there was some conflict there. So when all that finished and died down, they were looking to stay on in the country, and I think because La Ceiba is an outpost for where they were working before, I think there was some kind of scouting in this area, and they saw that the properties were accessible, and there's good grass. I mean, you can. This soil here is so very, very good for anything that agricultural, and it was just their background. And so they started a dairy farm because that was something.
Well, he was looking for something that he could use that was a source of income for the people, but also a place that he could disciple and train. And when he had come up here and he saw a few little dairy farms, he said, "I think we could do that, and I think we could teach people." And so he started investigating and got into it small and got bigger and bigger and hired more and more people and, ended up producing quite a bit of milk with his dairy farm. And he loved it. And he just found that he loved it. So when we came, that was part of our job, was to help. That we had not trained for. But Martin knew how to fix the truck that took the milk up and down. And so we did what we knew. We did dairy farm. We hosted teams. We helped with construction projects. I did the accounting and made brownies and took care of my kids, And I think slowly, like Martin just, whatever he gave him to do as a project, we did it. We knew puppets and ministry from our time in church. So we started a puppet team, and we went to churches, and we had our little youth group with puppets, and we built a puppet stage. And we started getting all this attention, like traveling into La Ceiba and outside of La Ceiba. Will you bring your puppet team? Because that was new back then. And we had quite the stage and quite the puppet team, because that was just something we had grown up doing. So we did that as a form of ministry, because it's what we knew how to do. So we just wanted to do everything we knew how to do. So we just were so excited to
fun.
be here. Yeah. So and he let us. He gave us that freedom that we said, well, do you mind if we do that? It's like, go do it. Go make a team in Rio Viejo. So Rio Viejo Church is actually where our puppet team was out of. Where we lived down, 30 minutes down the road. And this was where the dairy farm was. And so in his heart, he said, I believe in that mountain, there's no high schools. The schools go to 6th grade, and the kids can never go to university because there's no high school. I would like to have a high school for that cuenca, for that cove. There's nothing medical there. So there's 20,000 people that don't even have a nurse's station. We need a clinic there. We need an orphanage there. So he had that dream to have all of those things. And churches, orphanages, high schools, a clinic that became a hospital. And so Martin and I, because we just would ask him, what's the next project that we can help you fundraise for when we go back to the States? So we helped with pastors' houses and additions onto churches. And then one year he said, well, we need to get started on that clinic. And we said, we're going to help with that.
Little did we know.
Martin loves medicine. He was like already dispensing medicine and doing stitches because he just loved medicine already. And his heart was for medical missions. But we just thought, well, I guess God's going to do that a different way. When he stopped in the PhD program, they were so upset with him and said, you're going to do what? You're going to go live where? And you can't stop the program. And Martin said, the door opened, like we have been so ready to be missionaries. This is not important anymore. We're going to Honduras. And so he actually stopped that program and came here. And so he just thought, well, I guess it's not medical missions, it's just missions. But I still know a lot about medicine. So he's sewing people up and giving out. People would just bring us medicine. And so he was like our little doctor in the village with no degree. And so when that door opened to do medicine, and we were already fundraising for this place, and we already had a doctor to work here, and she backed out. And so then we had no doctor. And Martin's like, we had to find another doctor. And that's when God said, you're the doctor.
You better go
to medical school. It's like, that was not the plan. It was not what we thought. And so now on this mountain, in this cove, with different people, different ministries, different denominations, there is an orphanage. There is a high school, the very first high school. There is a church plant here from Louisiana, from his small home church that he was in Louisiana, Jack Dyer. That's now a mega church there. They have the first church plant, and there's a hospital. So it was his dream and his vision. And we did not know we were going to be the people to run this. We just thought we would always be his helpers and help him do dairy farm and all that. So the dairy farm is no more. It's the 5th one that's no more because of Hurricane Mitch. So when Hurricane Mitch came, right when we moved to go to medical school, Hurricane Mitch hit just a month later and completely just washed it away. Yeah. Actually, it was
October 29th.
Where the river is now.
Yeah,
the river changed course and completely took the dairy farm. Half of the cows just like got swept down. And so that it stopped the whole dairy farm.
Wow.
So we're on some of the pastures right now of the original dairy farm. That's where the hospital is.
And the high school is on some of the other pastures across the way.
Yeah.
So you have a master's then in biochemistry and molecular biology. We're working on a PhD, but God told you to leave that and come and be a Honduras.
He actually didn't get his master's because he had to write his last paper, and he was going to have to stay another semester. And he said, I don't need a master's. I'm going to Honduras. And that's why they thought he was crazy. They said, you can't leave. You've published papers. You've done all the work, all the classwork. And he goes, but that would require me staying until December. And they're asking for us to come now.
The door had opened.
I don't need that. We just could not run through it.
That's powerful.
So that's what we just left. So,
So what have been your biggest challenges, I would say, personally in starting this, kind of the clinic and the hospital? What have been your biggest challenges in that, maybe personally and professionally?
Ooh, those are very thought-provoking. We are people that we love what we do. Our calling is, we wake up to it in the morning and it puts us to sleep at night, I think the fitment, finding people that have the same passion, because that's what, whatever drives us will mark a pace, and to have people here that come with different levels of passion, that has really been a challenge for us to be able to to synchronize with other people. It's lovely when you find somebody that has the same drive and passion for what you do. But those people they're not in abundance. So that's a challenge. Personally, for me to find somebody that I can keep up, like we were able to meet that passion level with the Dyers, and that was so awesome, that if anything, they inspired us. They were older than us, and here they were just going at it, full wide open. And I think that was both an inspiration and a challenge to us. And now we're the older people, So in between then, when we were young and then
the young
being
people
old,
are trying to keep up with us, and we're going, hey, we can do this in our 50s. Come on, you're in your 20s. Like, keep up the pace. I think that for us, the call is what kept us here when the challenges came. The first year, for me, adjusting to the culture, not speaking Spanish. He spoke Spanish already. His mom made sure they kept Spanish in the home so that he spoke Spanish. But learning the culture, the pace of life, the kind of the difficulties of living in the middle of nowhere, a lot of bugs and animals and snakes and stuff. And that can be overwhelming, and the call is what kept us here, saying, it's difficult, but I can't imagine doing anything else. Can't imagine being happy doing anything else. I never wanted to do what I wasn't called to do, but the difficulties will make you question going back to that easier life, and the call is what kept us here. That we felt great satisfaction in doing what we felt like we were created to do. So even though it was physically difficult, sometimes emotionally difficult to be away from family, your home church, they get used to that, always having church family around. That first year to 2 years, being under the Dyers and having them mentor us and walk us through those difficulties, I think is what kept us on the field. And that great sense of purpose and calling, doing what we were created for. But that is, to me, the toughest part of it was those first couple years. Adjusting to life here is very important. I think working under someone and having them tell stories of this is what it was like for us, and this is how we walked through this situation, and this is how we did it. And a little bit of tough love of, come on, you can do this. Yeah, suck it up, buttercup. They did a little bit of that with us. And so we do a little bit of it, and we're probably a little softer than they were to people. But yeah, they just said, if this is what you were called to do, do it. If you can do anything else and be happy, go do that. But if you cannot feel satisfaction unless you are doing this, then this is what you're supposed to do. So suck it up, do it. Life's not easy. And we did, and now we absolutely, we can't imagine doing anything else.
So let me ask you a question. This may be something you haven't thought about before, but if you had it to do over again, what would you do differently?
I learned Spanish before I came here. Big one. He had the language, so he was just dealing with learning the culture. I had both on top and no availability of language school. So all I had was books to study, and I would just visit all my neighbors with a dictionary. That's honestly what I did. When Ellie that you met, that cooks for us now for all our teams, she was my first friend, and she helped me learn Spanish. For some reason, she could understand my horrible, broken, putting together words, not knowing verbs, just like vocabulary words. And it was hard for me to build relationships where he was making friends and he was understanding what was happening. I felt lost to humor, to anything that was happening. I was constantly going, what'd they say? What was that? And so I felt like the first years were more of a struggle because I did not have the language. And so for me, I would have, had I known, I guess in this day and age, you're called, you can go to language school. That 25 years ago, that was not the case. And that would have helped me a lot because then I would have just learned culture alongside him versus having to do both. And it took me almost 3 years to learn the language. And that was just from visiting. I mean, coming home crying because I was like, I just can't understand them. And someone's talking to you and they're crying. They're looking for you to pray with them, minister to them. And you don't even know what they're saying. And I'm just like, I'll pray for you in English. God speaks English and Spanish. That was just like my favorite phrase because I could not pray in Spanish. I couldn't speak Spanish. So after 3 years, I finally, it was just very frustrating. And I believe that God just miraculously gave it to me. I just had a women's group pray for me. And they said, what do you need? And I said, I have to speak Spanish. in that year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So this is a pretty amazing place. I've been here a few times now and had a chance to, just kind of get to know you guys a little bit and get to know your vision of this. But maybe you can share a little bit of what's the vision for the future for this place.
Well, we've been at this now, cut ribbon here, 2007, dedicated this building and ourselves, family. For 4.5 years, we lived in that back part. So we have a lot of vested interest in this. So 11 years now, we've been developing and defining what we call a model. How many people does it take? How many buildings? Just generally infrastructure. How much medicine would it take to see a per person kind of deal per year? So and I think we're very close to getting all of that gathered. Once this place becomes 100% functional, which we're very close to that. And we're already looking to expand. And so expansion means that we're very close to knowing all the details of what it takes for a unit or a model to function. So our hopes is that we would be able to, once define that, we can actually transpose this and multiply it to another place. A bigger community, a smaller community would require a bigger model or a smaller, depending on the size of population that we're projecting to see. And we hope that we could duplicate this, replicate it someplace else, maybe in Honduras. I hope that would be easier, right? Central America, not so difficult, definitely not easy, but doable. Or anywhere else that's third world, because this community is a slice of the third world. Anywhere you've been to Africa, I've yet to go there, but you would probably agree that this is very much the third world. And so it's very applicable, right? It's very relevant. What we define here, a per dollar per person per year basis, we can actually do someplace else in the third world. The third world is huge. Yeah. So I think we're developing something that's actually very relevant.
Yeah. There was a Lancet study that was done a couple of years ago now, I think it was 2015, that tells us that there's a huge population on the Earth, like 5 billion people, which is the vast majority of people. Kind of 2/3 world of doesn't have access to safe surgical care. So there is so. I think the health inequities that you guys are addressing, even in rural villages, people don't realize that up here in Honduras, that is a huge problem. Accessing care for rural populations in places like this, the geographic boundaries are almost insurmountable. So being here locally in this particular place is very strategitic. And you shared a little bit about that yesterday, so we'll have an opportunity to share that with people who are watching. But I think that's really it's a great vision, because I think that's the issue. It's just what's access look like to the poorest of the poor, and it just doesn't exist in so many places. So I'm so impressed with what you guys are doing here.
I love that. I think during this time we've learned how to better affect an area that with not just medicine, but having that partnership with a school, that education comes in. Our partnering with the elementary schools, of going into them and helping their infrastructure, their teachers, going in and doing health education and getting not only the kids healthier, but just teaching them the better choices of what to eat, of dental care, of washing their hands. And I think that has affected our community in good ways, just health education. Just things that they weren't taught in school, that we were taught. Don't throw your trash on the floor. Brush your teeth every day. Wash your hands after you've gone to the restroom or changed a diaper. We just grew up learning those things and hearing even in school, and they did not. And so we have seen in 10 years, 11 years that we've been here, we've seen a change in the entire community of us being here, having access to health care, but then the kids coming up saying, I'm going to eat fruit and not the candy from the pulperia, or we're going to drink milk and not Pepsi because the doctor told us milk is better for us than Pepsi or Coke. And we've just seen healthcare come up. We've just seen people healthier.
That's true.
So we want to go into another area and do that. But we've learned how to, with a small permanent staff, but utilizing short-term missions teams to bring about those goals, go out and do medical brigades, but the people knowing that when they finish that medicine, they come here and they get refills to their medication. They say, I didn't know I had high blood pressure. Well, you do, and here's medicine, but here's an appointment to come see us. Today we're at your village, but next week we're going to be in Rio Viejo, and here's a free appointment to come see us, and we're going to check your blood pressure again, and we're going to manage you. And if you can't afford to pay, bring beans, bring eggs. We love eggs. We love chickens. So they pay with what they have, but once they come here and that relationship started, they know they can always come here. So I think the teams feel good when they leave. They're not just giving them medicine and leave and they'll never get any more. They continue to come here and their health improves, and they go to their neighbors and say, I haven't felt this good in years, you should go there. And the building can be intimidating, but when we go out to their village and we're seeing them sitting in their school chairs and out in the yard of the school, that's their village. And they come, and then we say, here's a free appointment. Bring this little green piece of paper to the window, and I tell them, and I'm the one at the window, and you give me that paper, and it's free. And then they come in and they go, oh, this is how it works. We just see that big building on the side of the road, and it looks intimidating. That how does it work? How much money are they going to ask for? It's a nice building. It's probably going to be expensive. Doctors in LaSalle are expensive. And they come and find out, oh, it's not. There's only 50 lempiras. And now I see how it works, and they're not intimidated by it anymore. And that's how we get our patients to come in.
That's amazing. I love how you guys have integrated short-term teams, because a lot of people know me from my book, and I think they read it on first glance and say, well, that's kind of a criticism of short-term missions. No, it's a criticism of short-term missions that are done badly.
Yeah.
I think you guys do short-term missions really, really well, and I just love that we can hold you guys up as an example for that, because you have charts on all these people, and you know them, their families, their struggles in many instances, and you know what these villages are like, and you take teams not to facilitate the team's objectives, but to facilitate what God has called you to do. You're allowing them to plug into a long-term work, and I think that's where God is really glorified in those kind of programs, because they're able to be part of a long-term work. So the team is blessed, and most importantly, the community is blessed. And so I'm a big fan of what you guys do here.
We give credit to a lady from Louisiana, Claudia Berry, strategist. I mean, some of the unique callings that God gives to the body of Christ. And she came to us and she focused us. We were wanting to be, hosts for groups that are coming. So whatever you guys want to do, we'll be in on it. And she said, you define and focus your objectives, your mission and vision. And when groups come to you, you tell them, well, this is what we do. So if it coincides with what you guys want to do, great. Yeah. If not, we know people that could help you with that, with what you want to do. And so that really has allowed us to harness the energy and resources of small missions groups, which a lot of times they're criticized for being, tourists or whatever. But thankfully our teams have a focus and a mission and a vision, and we execute. And, financially we do it very well. Everybody's happy with it. It works for us, it works for them. And everybody wins. The patients win, the kids when they visit educationally, medically they win. It's a win-win all the way around.
It really is. It is when done properly. And so we know culture here after 24 years. And when they come, we focus on that, like, this is how we're going to do it. And this is the right way to do it. And this is the way not to do it. Yeah. But, you're here to help us meet the goals, but not to make yourself feel better. And giving is like, we don't do that. It's about relationship here, not about giving gifts. It'll make you feel good for the moment, but it's not going to help us with what we're doing. We don't want to be seen as that.
That's tremendous.
As the gift givers. And our teams listen. Yeah. Every once in a while you have a stray. Right? Yeah. But overall, like that preparation before they come, and the preparation as soon as they get here, that we don't go out the first day, orientation day, going over all of that again, and it's worked. It's been beautiful, and they come and it is a way for them to see missions and get missions in their heart. We plant that seed, and they're changed forever. But no damage was done to this long-term call and helping this whole River Cove long-term.
That's amazing, because what's one thing I share with short-term groups a lot, or anybody interested in short-term missions, is that they need a cultural bridge. You can't come from North America and jump into Latin America or wherever it is around the world without a cultural bridge. When you do that, you end up with all kinds of dysfunctional cross-cultural relationships. And this, you guys are able to give them the guidance they need, and you use them in strategic ways, and I think that's really awesome. So.
Or a bridge. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that.
A bridge.
So.
Well, it's our idea to have people introduced to missions with a minimal, negative experiences, and the most positive. And that's our, as far as missions teams, that's one of our objectives.
So biggest needs here, before we close, you guys need some help here, obviously. It would be great to see, we're really been looking for a long-term physician to send to you guys for a while, and I know one of them will get to stick here at some point. But I know you need some long-term. How many teams do you do a year, just out of curiosity?
Usually around 12, 10 to 12. We've done as many as 14. Okay. That's tough.
Yeah,
so we stick to that 10 to 12.
So you might have room for one more if they beg and plead.
Yes.
But you really need a couple of long-term providers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ideally, I would love to have a general practitioner here. Any specialist that can deal with, the general aspects of medicine. But a general practitioner, a nurse practitioner, in family medicine, a PA, family medicine, any kind of surgical experience in those general practitioners would be great, because we have all kinds of trauma that happens here. And then nurses that are very capable to do the whole spectrum of nursing. Nursing requires everything from toilet cleaning all the way up to injecting somebody. People that are labile, I think, is the greatest description right there.
Yeah. Just flexible, because we host teams. There's a lot of hospitality that goes on. There's a lot of organization just to keep a large place running with a few people, and so we always look for people who are versatile, to come and only do nursing. That would never happen, because that's not what we do every day, 24 hours a day. We do a lot of things on top of that, a lot of administrative work and
ministry.
Yeah, and ministry work. So versatile people that kind of want to do a lot of everything and wear a lot of different hats and use that skill that they have as well. And so I think those are the ones that are good fits for us. We've had some wonderful people come for 3 years, 5 years, 6 years. We've had some incredible 6-month interns and volunteers, and that's how we've kept it running, is with that. It's 3 months, 6 months, and then the people that come and stay for that 3 to 5 year period that has advanced us.
Well, that's great. Thank you guys for taking time out.
Thank you.
I need to cut this short because I love talking to you guys, but it's been good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.